Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting, Darian the Family Guy, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best-kept secret in teaching. You got it, international education. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast. I am Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting, and I'm here with Kent, the Cat Guy.
Hi, JP. Thanks for having me.
And and Greg is out at this point, but I'm very excited to introduce us to Kim Cofino. Is that correct? Kim Cofino?
That is, yep.
And she's calling us in from Thailand. So we've got Thailand, Mexico, and the Middle East all represented, and very wide time zones. 6 a.m.
Tough time zones.
3 p.m., 7 p.m., I think.
Yep.
Hey, JP, before you jump in with your first question for our guest, JP is the one who's always fangirling for our guests. Today, it's my turn to fangirl just a little bit. I am so excited that Kim's on our program. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Yay!
I'm excited.
All right, well, let's find out why, everybody. So, Kim, can you give us an elevator version of how you came overseas?
How I came overseas? Sure. My best friend in high school was actually teaching at Munich International School. She was an intern, and we had stayed connected through college, and she was like, come over and visit. And I was like, this is amazing. I didn't know there were international schools. I didn't know such a thing existed. And so I was determined to get her job when she left that year, and I did. So that's how I became overseas.
And so you were already a teacher at that point?
I was not. Came in as an intern, and she was an intern as well. I don't know if they still have these kinds of positions anymore, but many years ago when I first started in international schools, it was not unusual, especially for the European schools, to have intern positions, and they weren't always teachers, weren't necessarily trained teachers. They were interns.
So you were finished university studies, or you were still in that process?
Finished university, went over with the intention to go for 1 year as an intern. I was the computer lab monitor. It was very much an intern type job,
Yeah.
But after, I'm going to say a month, I loved it. I loved my principal. I loved the kids. I loved the school. And I just went to my principal's office and said, what can I do to stay? And he's like, you have to get your teacher's license. We'll help you. And so the school was really supportive, helped me. I don't know if anyone else on your show has ever been through Fast Train. It's a program out of George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. And it was originally founded to train the foreign affairs spouses, so FAST, F-A-S-T. It was Foreign Affairs Spouse Teacher Training Program. So that's what I did and got my teacher certification. I did my practicum at MIS, and I ended up staying there for 5 years, and that's how I came overseas.
And presumably you eventually got out of the computer lab intern position.
Yes.
And what did you go into at that point?
So that was in the early days. We're really going back. This is in 2000. So right around the time when schools started having laptops and started having a laptop program. And so that school invested heavily in having a laptop program. They were one of the earlier schools in the region to have extensive laptops. So I became the IT facilitator. And then by the time that I left, I was I don't remember, middle school academic technology coordinator or something along those lines. So
something
I ended
fancy.
up doing building the very first technology integration program at that school while I was there. And I was there for 5 years.
And presumably that was your background. Your bachelor's was in IT? No?
No, I was a history and political science major, and I always wanted to be a human rights lawyer. And when, honestly, I never thought I wanted to be a teacher, it was not something that was ever of an interest to me, and just kind of all clicked.
Oh, cool.
Just taking one step back there, Kim, where did you grow up?
Reading.
Okay. All right. I'm on the West Coast. JP was up in Canada, and so we're all spread out from our roots, too.
Greg in Wisconsin.
And Greg in Wisconsin, that's right. So you're in Munich, you're teaching for 5 years. What prompted you to spread your wings from Munich, and where did you end up going?
At the time, I don't know if it still is this way, but at the time, Germany had a law that you could stay under 60 months, under 5 years, and get your pension back as a check. So it was kind of like one of those like stay for 5 years or you could stay an indefinite amount of time. And so at the time, my husband and I were like, well, this is kind of the stay or go moment. Like, are we going to stay or are we going to go? And both of us thought, let's try something else. And so we ended up going to, I don't even remember which job fair we were at, but we thought, because at the time it was very popular to travel to Dubai. Dubai was like this very exotic place, especially from Germany. Like, that was just a super exotic place. So we had traveled to Dubai, interviewed at lots of places, had a lot of offers in Dubai. But then at the job fair, I got an offer at Mount Kiara International School in Kuala Lumpur. And after the whole like job fair day, you know, the whole day is so crazy. I came back into the room where my husband was and I was like, all right, is it the desert or is it the jungle? And he's like, I think the jungle. And so we had really intended to go to Dubai. I was like targeting all these schools in Dubai. And then that we just ended up in Malaysia and we loved it. And it was great. And, you know, best decision ever. So all works out.
The jungle called to you.
Yeah, I guess so.
And did you go as tech, as the director of tech or something like that?
No, I was a middle school IT coordinator, facilitator, integrator, something like that.
And are those teaching positions at the same time? Are you teaching kids?
Yep. So while I was at Munich, courses? I did my MYP design, multiple MYP design training. So I came in doing middle school teacher of technology, and I can't remember what my title was, something tech facilitator, integrator, something like that, but also teaching, yes.
Because MYP design and tech is a full-time job, and you're saying you did a little bit of that, but also the
depends how big the school is.
Right. Okay.
So I must have had, honestly, I can't remember what my schedule was like, but I must have had some time that was not teaching time, that was like supporting other teachers. That was the beginning of technology coaching. This was in 2005. So it was the very beginning of this idea that there would be staff members who didn't teach, but supported other teachers in bringing technology into their classroom. And that was the kind of job that I had, teaching and that.
And now I'm getting like spidey senses because now we're getting into where you left the classroom and became a full-time instructional coach, I think, at some point.
Yeah, so after Mount Kiara, we only stayed there for 2 years. That was my first for-profit school experience, and I learned a lot in that experience, and we opted to go back to a nonprofit school. So ended up working at International School Bangkok for 3 years. And there I had a variety of job titles, one of which was 21st Century Literacy Coordinator. And that role was like bridging the gap between the library and technology. And then I was the middle school IT coordinator. I can't remember, something like that. And then from there, we went to Yokohama International School in Japan. And there I was secondary technology and learning coach. And we were there for 5 years. And then we came back to Thailand. And my husband works at NIST International School. And I've been running my own business since then.
Fantastic. All right. Now we want to hear what... So instructional coaches have really, as you pointed out, started to come into the foreground. It's taken like maybe 10, 15 years, hasn't it, over in the international circuit to finally see some traction?
Yeah, it kind of ebbs and flows. It's like a little bit of a pendulum swing. When I was at ISB, I was part of a large team of coaches. So we had science, math, literacy, tech, and then K-12 curriculum coaches, all in a big team. We all worked together, and that was 2005-ish. And then since then, I think those positions kind of went away, and now they've come back again. So I feel like there's a lot of pendulum swing with this particular position.
Let me ask a couple questions here, Kim. Did you go to Germany originally with a husband, or did you sort of find one along the way while you were there?
He came with me. We were not married, but he came with me. We met at university.
Okay. And so I'm doing the math here, and I'm thinking it looks like maybe 15 years in various international schools before you opened up and sort of went on your own way. So how many years now have you been running your own business?
10 years.
Wow,
so.
10 years. Do you want to tell us about that journey a little bit?
Sure. So when I was at ISB, I was doing a lot of like weekend workshops and conferences and maybe a little bit of consulting. And then when I moved to Japan, I started doing a lot more of that. And so it became like 2 full-time jobs for almost the whole time I was in Japan. I was like away every weekend, doing workshops, running events, and it just was a lot. And so towards the end of my time there, I think maybe my last year, maybe my last 2 years, I went part-time so that I could not crush myself, basically. And when we moved here, I just didn't go take a full-time role, just Alex did.
And what were these workshops and conferences? Was it the instructional coach? Was it the tech? Was it a little bit of both?
A lot of tech in those early days. A lot of conferences would have been like through EARCOS, through Learning 2 conference, those are probably the 2 main ones at that time. And then EARCOS weekend workshops. I don't know how familiar you are with the region, but, going to schools and running weekend
So I suppose we should say for our
East Asia Regional Overseas Council of Schools.
Yeah. And then, so a lot of times I remember being in the Middle East, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of these sort of regional conferences. Near East South Asia, NISA was a very popular one in the Middle East that would go kind of like to India, maybe Pakistan, and then a little bit of Eastern
Turkey,
Africa.
some of the places.
And Greece, yeah. So NISA, and then when I moved to Korea and China, then I suddenly heard a lot of EARCOS or AIRCOS. Sometimes they pronounce it AIRCOS, and I realized this is just NISA but to the east.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they're great because they have conferences and professional development for teachers. In NISA, they had winter training institutes, and sometimes those were held right in schools. So our school in Oman was the host a few times, and that allowed you to see what other schools had. And so it was kind of a nice way, if you were sort of soft recruiting, you could go to a conference and see another school. But I never did get to an AIRCOS. Do they host them in schools as well? The little shops?
So
workshops?
They do weekend workshops that are hosted by a school, and then they do a regional teachers conference, a regional leaders conference. They have a lot of conferences. It's pretty robust organization here in East Asia, but they have both types of events. Those larger conferences are usually hosted in hotels.
And can I ask, how do you get into those? Were you being headhunted and asked to come, or did you do a little bit of footwork and say, is there a chance for me to give a workshop?
So to get to go to the EARCOS Teachers Conference, which is probably the one that most teachers would be ready to present at, they have a whole process, and your EARCOS teachers representative at the school says that the conference is coming up. Would anyone like to present? So you prepare your presentation, you give your presentation at your school to an audience of your peers at your school. Everyone does it, and so then they select the ones that they feel are the best fit for the conference or most polished or whatever the criteria is. And so that's how I started. I can remember doing my first pitch in front of my principal and them giving me all this great feedback. And once I started doing them, it was a lot easier to keep doing them. And then I started getting asked to come. So that was really nice.
What was your first pitch to get the ball rolling?
Oh my God, that is a good question. That is a really good question. I have a feeling it was about social networks in the classroom. That's what I remember, but I am not like 100% sure.
Folks, if you're listening and you remember seeing Kim's first
send an email.
presentation,
Tell me, what was it?
Write into us and let us know. I'm fascinated because I loved going to these conferences. Like I say, I kind of missed AIRCOS, but I was a big NISA fan. I would go to the conferences. I went to they were called fall leadership conferences, often in Doha.
I just keynoted that this year.
Yeah, awesome. Was it in Doha as well?
No, it was in Dubai this year.
Okay, because oftentimes it felt like I just kept going back to Qatar for that. And what I enjoyed is not only the keynotes, and so congratulations on that, and the workshops, but also the networking possibilities of meeting. I remember the day when I walked into the sort of exhibition center where they have some recruiters and companies that are there to show their software or whatever they happen to be selling. And I saw my first head of school, and I was like across across the exhibition, and I just made a beeline for John Chandler, who was my first head of school in Turkey. And I was like, John, I can't believe you're here. And this was 14 years later. So I was very excited.
Small
He was
world.
working at Carney Sando and Associates, which is a recruiter mostly in the States, but they also do headhunting for international schools. And so he was there. He was able to introduce me around, and he was like, this was one of my first hires in Turkey. So it was very, very cool.
Very cool.
They are small world. They just, when you go to these things, you recognize faces, you recognize names, and it does make you feel like you're part of that biggest district,
Absolutely.
as Greg would call it. It's the biggest district in the world, is the world.
With your business now, who is reaching out to you? I mean, it's individual teachers can work with you for consulting. How is that business going, and can you tell us a little bit about what your clients are like?
Sure. So my business, you heard a lot about all of my tech work, but when I was at International School Bangkok, and sorry, I'm going to give you a little backstory so I can answer that question. When I was at International School Bangkok, that was my first time working in a team of coaches. And that's when I started to realize, oh, there's this other kind of coaching, instructional coaching. It's more established. It's well researched. It's something that's been going on in the United States for a while. And I started realizing that there's a lot that tech coaches or people who were formerly tech teachers that just kind of like stuck into tech coaching because the job title just changed over the years. There's a lot we could learn from instructional coaching. And so that's kind of when I started getting really interested in instructional coaching. And over the years, I've stepped a little bit away from the tech side of things, and I'm much more focused on instructional coaching now. I, to be honest, don't really talk about tech at all. So that's not really my interest point anymore. I'm really interested in the ways that we can work better together through better conversations, better relationships, deeper learning, all of those pieces. And I think that happens through coaching. So my company supports both aspiring, current, and experienced coaches who want to continue to develop their practice or leverage their skills to improve their coaching program. And we also work with schools who are building coaching programs or evaluating their coaching programs or improving their coaching programs. So I work with individuals and with schools.
So you have a two-prong.
When you talk about coaching, it's like, we at our school, we have a reading coach, and we have a math coach. Is that who we're talking about? Are we talking about sort of this non-academic sort of coaching, just sort of teacher, just sort of all aspects of teaching? What is coaching in the 2025s and beyond?
So you're talking about some subject area coaches that might be like your literacy coach or your math coach. I work with those people. I also work with instructional coaches who aren't subject area specific, and they just support teaching and learning for any educator. And their expertise is in the skill of coaching, as opposed to being like an in-house consultant. Like sometimes a literacy coach or a math coach might be a real expert in a specific format of instruction, like science of reading, let's say, for example, and they're doing a little bit more consulting than they are doing coaching. I work primarily with people who are learning to be instructional coaches, although there are literacy coaches and math coaches among them.
Okay, so can I just ask, can I interject? You've touched upon something that is in my wheelhouse. So I was very, very exacting in that I was going to become an international teacher consultant and not a coach. And can I hear your definition sort of the two roles? Because that's really, when people call me a coach, I immediately stop them. I say, I'm a consultant.
Yeah.
So can you tell us the difference?
So the way I was using it before is in the coaching world, we talk about there's different ways that you might interact with your coaching partners. You might take more of a consultative stance, which is like you're a little bit of the expert. They're coming to you to ask questions, and you have the answers. Kind of the middle of that we call the collaborating stance, and that's when we're working 50-50, we're partners. And then the coaching stance is when the teacher is the expert in their subject area, they're the expert in their students, they're the expert in their grade level, the developmental age of their students, and you are there to facilitate reflective practice, to ask great questions, to really listen to what they're saying, and help them uncover things that they really already know, and they just need a thought partner to work through. So that's like the three coaching stances that I would talk about in my courses or with clients. And when we're talking about coaching versus consulting now, I see that very similarly. A consultant is an expert expert who has a specific area of expertise that can support you in reaching those specific goals. And a coach would be someone who really helps you process your own thinking. At times may offer ideas, strategies, suggestions, or solutions, as long as their coaching partner has okayed that this is the moment to share that thing. But for the most of the time, the goal is to have a reflective conversation. And there are very specific and concrete skills that anyone can learn to be really effective at that kind of conversation. But that's the people that I'm training are learning to be experts in that, like how to coach.
So I always thought a coach asks a lot of questions and a consultant answers a lot of questions. And I felt that was the key. And I wasn't into getting my clients to reflect necessarily, but they were coming to me for answers. And that's how I determined my title, because I felt like I had the expertise they were looking for. They already had tons of questions. Now they just needed some answers. So it's really good to hear that sort of dichotomy. But then now you're saying there's a middle. Can you tell us a little bit more about that collaborative coach?
Sure. This is like really geeking out about coaching. So
yeah, but this is the episode.
Great. When I teach in my courses, we often reference the work of Laura Lipton and the work of Joel and Killian. There's a lot of other coaching experts that may come up in this conversation, but those are two people that I reference all the time. And Laura Lipton uses the 3 stances, which is consultant, collaborator, and coach. And a coach can operate in any 3 of those stances in any single conversation or in between meetings, in different meetings in a coaching cycle. And the collaborator would be that we're partners. Everything is the we. We're doing things together. It's kind of 50-50. It's what teachers are really used to when they're operating on a team. We're really comfortable in that space. So that's kind of the in-between. The consultant, I really have no idea. I need your help. Like I'm having this problem. I need a solution. I don't really know how to solve this. And then the collaborator in the middle, and then the coach on the other end. Let's unpack this together. And I'm going to help kind of guide you through that process.
And I don't have the answers, you do, kind of thing.
Yes, but the coach in that conversation may navigate between all 3 stances. Another piece of work that we reference all the time is Elena Aguilar's Mind the Gap, where we look at potential ways to uncover or recognize when a teacher that we're working with or a colleague that we're working with actually does have a gap. And asking another question is not going to solve their problem because they are missing something. It's a knowledge gap, it's a skill gap, it's a will gap. There's something there that they really don't know. And so as a coach, you have to be an expert in understanding what is it that your coaching partner needs in this moment and how can you uncover that in the conversation, because just asking questions endlessly is not going to solve a problem. But the power of asking really good questions and listening is that when the answer comes from the person who thinks they don't know, they really own it. And that's the goal of coaching, is to build capacity in your coaching partner, not dependence. And so that's why we try to work really hard at being really good at listening, asking those really thoughtful questions, recognizing that the teacher is the expert in their subject area, their grade level, the students that they teach, because they are, and they deserve that respect.
Because I think we're touching on that sort of very tender topic of some people are recommended for coaching and not necessarily open to that idea. And so they're reticent to accepting help. And so hopefully a school that has an instructional coach, they might have sort of targeted audience at first, like being, I'm not sure, let's find out. Being told, can you go talk with so these teachers and see if they're open to coaching.
So this is one of the things that I'm really working hard to advocate for, and it's one of the reasons why in the last year I worked with a team of about 25 other international school educators to found a nonprofit called the Association for the Advancement of Instructional Coaching in International Schools, of which Tico is one of our board members. We call it AAICIS for short. And this is one of the trends that happens in international schools is if we hire instructional coach, we want to ensure that they're busy. So then we think that the answer is to require people to work with a coach, but that's not really the way that coaching is going to be effective. It needs to be voluntary, optional, so teachers opt into coaching. So that's one of the pieces that I work on both in my courses and in my consulting work and with AAICIS, is really understanding that coaching is non-evaluative, confidential, not tied to appraisal, and it's opt-in for the teacher. Because growth is an invitation, it requires agency. You can require people to attend professional development, but that doesn't mean they're going to learn. You can't really force them to learn.
And so this way you get early adopters, right? Early adopters say, hey, I want coaching, and everyone else is kind of watching from the sidelines. They see how beneficial it is, then they start to opt in.
Yeah, so coaches have to learn how to communicate what coaching is, why it's valuable, why teachers would want to participate or engage in coaching, and they need to learn how to communicate that to all the different levels of change readiness. So there's the innovators, you don't have to work so hard for them. The early adopters, you don't really have to work so hard for them either. But then we get to the early majority and things are a little bit different. We get to the late majority, things are really different. And then for the most part, my general recommendation is spend the least amount of time on the resistors, because you're not going to get a lot there. But if you can figure out the ways to communicate to those different kind of levels of change readiness, then that's how you start to build a culture of coaching.
Let me jump in here, JP. Wow, my mind is blown. Kim, you said anyone who really wants to put the effort in can probably be a coach, but surely a couple things. Number one, surely a couple of times you've had to say, well, maybe this isn't going the way you want it to. Or on a flip side to that, when you first meet someone who might be kind of fairly new to coaching, what is it that you see in them that says, this is really going to work out well for them, or maybe this is going to be a challenge for them? What are some of the things that give you the signs that kind of tell you which direction this coach is going?
Well, that's a good question. I think the one about surely there's times when it's not going to work out for you, I think that happens when people really can't set aside their own expectations or desires or standards. Standards isn't the right word, but when you can't let the other person lead their own learning journey, then coaching is going to be really hard. Then you really probably just want to be an administrator. And that's might be a better pathway. You know what I mean? It's just two different areas, and that's fine. So uncovering that is important. And I think a lot of schools see coaches and coaching as a mini administrator position. So then that person doesn't usually get told they're not really coaching, because the administrator's like, great, I have a mini me to do work that I don't have time to do because administrators are stretched thin. So, and the sad part of that really burns coaching, right? Then, I've worked in a school where the coach was basically a mini administrator. Then I go to another school where it's the kind of coaching that I advocate for, and I don't want anything to do with that because that person's the mini administrator, right? So in our school, you were talking about it being the biggest district in the world, that gets around. So if coaching is implemented in a way that doesn't really support actual coaching, that gets around the school community. So then the second question you asked me was, how do you know when someone's a natural? I think that happens a lot when people are able to be genuinely curious about others, and they can build a relationship quickly, and they can really just listen to what someone else is saying and care about what they want for their learning, as opposed to what the person doing the listening thinks they should want. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what
it does. It totally explains my career pathway. I was like, I'm listening going, yeah, not me. Yeah, that's me. And what about you, Kent? I'd be curious, Kent, do you sort of see yourself in one path or the other?
No, it's hard to say. I will tell you, it's very interesting. When you talk about resisting versus sort of being open, and I can tell that being sort of 2 decades into my teaching career, people kind of want to know, it says, okay, you could take direction from that 60-year-old male administrator that's always giving you direction, but are you able to take direction from that 25-year-old, maybe new woman into the business? Because, those are 2 different things. You can't, so I can tell they're looking at me saying, which way is this guy going?
Yeah, and because I think sometimes the coaches in schools can be much younger than some of that sort of resisting pocket of teachers, and that can be a challenge as well. Like, what do you know that you can tell me about teaching and things?
And
But
that's the
they're the ones that
misconception right
have that
there.
innovation.
But also that's the misconception right there. The coach isn't responsible for telling the person about their teaching. The idea is that we are looking at data that is collected from your classroom that you have identified as this is a thing I want to improve on, and I'm going to help you process your thinking as we do that. And some of that might require, yes, maybe I do have some area of expertise that I can help you with, or maybe there's some research, or maybe I can connect you with someone. But more times than not, it's about giving space and time for me to actually look at what is happening in my classroom with my students. And I already know because I'm a teacher, I'm an expert in my area. I know what I want to improve on. Now I have a partner to do that with me. I don't have to do it by myself.
Do you have room for people to sign up and jump on board? How does
course.
someone reach out to you? And I think JP and I are almost ready to sign up.
Come
Where do
on. Yes.
people jump on board?
So my website is edurolearning.com, EDURO learning.com. And that's the same account on social media, Eduro Learning on Instagram, Eduro Learning on LinkedIn. And you could also Google my name. My name is spelled as kind of a unique way, Kim Cofino. So that's an easy one, KIMCOFINO. And I have cohorts every year.
And so do you run cohorts almost like a university would run a semester where you sign up at the same time and you kind of travel through this journey together during the beginning and the end?
Yep.
And when is your when do your sort of classes run then?
So I have 4 classes that I run every year. One is called The Coach. That's the biggest one. That's the one for teachers who know they want to be a coach or they're already coaching and they just really want to leverage their practice. That goes a whole year. It starts in September. It ends at the end of May. Then I have one for classroom teachers who want to learn about coaching. They're not really sure about it. It's called Getting Started as a Coach. That one starts in November. Then I have one for coaches who are experienced and they're ready to kind of push into the leadership aspect of their role. It's called Coaches as Leaders. That one starts in February. And then I have one for all educators as well as leaders called Coaching Mindset, Cultivating a Coaching Mindset, and that starts in March.
Okay, so you're ramping up, getting ready for your Coaches as Leaders course coming up soon.
Yes, it's happening next week. I think registration opens.
Nice.
Well, good luck. Have a lot of fun with that.
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all 4 of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPXpats. That's with an S. ITPXpats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
All right, Miss Kim, I've written down 2 other things here, and I'm going to let you choose between the 2 of them: podcasting or weightlifting.
Great question. I'll always choose lifting weights, but I do
about that.
enjoy podcasting. I have been a competitive power lifter for 8 years-ish, 6 years, something like that. I started lifting weights. I enjoyed it. I happened to be living in Thailand and working with a trainer, and he said, "Oh, there's the first ever powerlifting competition next month. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Sure." So I did the first ever powerlifting competition here in Thailand, and I loved it. So I kept going and got a little bit more serious about it. And I was on the Thai national team 2 years in a row. I have not competed this year at all. I'm kind of taking a little break. I got other things going on. So I got to compete on behalf of Thailand for the Asian Classic Championships in Dubai in 2022 and in Johor Bahru, Malaysia in 2023, which was super cool.
Is this the
JP?
Is this the flick?
Not that one. That is Olympic weightlifting. My one is powerlifting, so it's squat, bench, and deadlift. It's 3 lifts. Yes.
Okay.
Get ready, because I can talk about this even longer than coaching.
Is it during the 2022 and 2023? Is that the gym every single day? Then, is that what it takes?
It depends. Most powerlifters train 4 days a week. That would be the average, or not the average. The kind of general standard would be 4 days a week. Most people. At the time, there was a time when I was training 6 or 7 days a week. I don't know that it was the best for me, but I did enjoy it. And so now I train 4 days a week.
4 days a week, still, even with the business going full time, you're getting to the gym. Morning or evening?
I have a gym in my house. Like, I'm looking at it right here. So I work from home. During COVID, when COVID came to Thailand, it was very clear that it was going to be, the gym would shut and I wouldn't know, and I did not like that idea. So I put a squat rack and bench and everything in my house. So I can train anytime.
Oh, so anytime. And so what is it? Probably the afternoon. I'm thinking, what's your routine like? You run your own business, and so you're a lot like JP Mint. You don't have someone else who's sort of in charge of your schedule. So what does a day look like, starting with the morning?
So I have arranged my day around my clients, and now this is what I am used to, what I like. So I have morning clients who are in the U.S., like in North America, South America. I shouldn't say U.S., North America, South America. So they're my early morning clients. So usually I wake up and I work with them in the morning, or if I don't have client calls in the morning when I'm coaching or leading courses, then that's like my good brain time is early in the morning. And then usually most of the people I work with are not super ready to speak with me around 10, 11. So that's usually when I lift before lunch. Then I have lunch. And then I will work with my afternoon clients. And usually I have something going on in the evening as well. So for me, my lifting usually is before lunch. And that hasn't always been my schedule, but now it is. And so I'm totally used to it. But you can get used to pretty much anything.
And so you're like JP, you have clients all over the globe, and you're sitting there in, I think, GMT plus 10?
7.
Your time zone? Plus 7. And so you are arranging your schedule to work with clientele in North America, throughout Asia. JP, you can relate to that, being almost 6 in the morning when we kicked off.
Mornings, yeah. It's funny because I was never a morning person. I was always a night person. Slowly in the last parts of my career, especially as an administrator, I was awake at 5 in the morning, getting substitute teachers and things like that. So I've just shifted my needle into a morning routine where, if I remember when we were trying to set up this call, you said past 8 p.m. I'm brain dead. There's no way I can do a podcast.
I'm very proud of myself. I'm like, I'm so awake. I'm even looking at him. I'm like, I look so awake. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's so fascinating having you on. Can we go back just for a second? Because I feel like if this rushed past me and I knew about it, it might have rushed past international teachers and local teachers listening in. The association, can you tell us a little bit more about how that started and what is it exactly?
Yep. So the work that I've been doing for the past 10 years is primarily around my business, which is great. And I love it. And I work with clients and it's wonderful. But it's just me and a couple of other people that work on my team. And so 2 years ago, I was at the IRCOS Leaders Conference. I think this is when it happened. I might mess up some of the things, but about 2 years ago, I was at the IRCOS Leadership Conference, and they were all asking very similar questions, which I was very familiar with from my business. But I had this moment where I was like, you know what? I'm just one person. Yes, I feel like I can address these issues, but actually, I think, especially in the academic world and alongside, we're there in the international school circuit, this would be really even better received and make even more of an impact if it was coming from a nonprofit organization. And so I kind of had this thought in my head, like maybe for me to continue moving this conversation forward, to elevate this conversation, to help school leaders recognize the ways that instructional coaching can really support teaching and learning and can really meet their goals. And we don't kind of implement it in a way that dilutes the effectiveness. This would work more successfully if it was coming from a group of educators in a nonprofit. So I it lingered in my head for a little while. And then I think that February, I reached out to a couple of people and I was like, what do you think? Do you think this sounds like a good idea? Should we do this? And they were like, yeah, we should do it. So then I did a huge round of customer research where I talked to tons of heads of schools, other directors of nonprofits, just really kind of digging into how does this work? What is it like? And how do you start a nonprofit? And would schools be interested in this? And all of that gave me all sorts of information. So ended up bringing together about 25 international school educators, some who are currently coaches, some who are previously coaches and are in different roles now, and pulled together our amazing board on which one of my instructional coaching superheroes, Joellen Killian, is a member of our board. Another instructional coaching superhero, Steve Barkley, is a member of our board. Tico Ohms, Madeline Hyde, and Nika Johnson, all experienced, brilliant people from all different areas of education. And our team is absolutely amazing. And we had our launch in March of last year, March of 2024. We had 10 founding member schools. We had 6 founding partners. And I think we started, once we launched right out of the gate, we had 70 members. And now we have 13 member schools, 140 members. We still have our same 6 partners, and we're just working to grow, basically. And the mission of that organization is to help schools understand the power of instructional coaching, to unlock student potential, to cultivate thriving communities, empower teachers, all of those things. That's part of the work of that organization.
And who is joining, other than the schools, as you say, so you grew the schools, but the instructional coaches and potentially instructional coaches are joining?
Sure. It's primarily actual instructional coaches for the most part. It's people who are in that position. But yes, everyone is welcome if they're really dedicated to instructional coaching. They really want to be part of a community. It's a membership-driven organization, so we have monthly community coaching calls. That's where we get the whole community together for a conversation around coaching. And that's what the individual members get. They get monthly community coaching calls, and they get access to our private members network, which is on a tool called Mighty Networks. You'd be familiar with it, but it's basically an asynchronous 24/7 job alike for instructional coaches, specifically in international schools. Our work is unique and different to the work that happens in public schools, so we need our own kind of space. And then the leaders, the schools, get a monthly leader speaker series where they get to hear from an expert in instructional coaching from a leadership lens. They get a quarterly leaders meetup where all the school leaders get together. They get access to some of our resources that are designed for leaders. And I'm forgetting something else in there. And then we just conducted the first landscape study of instructional coaching in international schools, where we specifically went out to figure out what is instructional coaching like in international schools. We had 89 responses from schools around the world, and that's been published, just published in a new book on research in international education. So that has all happened since March 2024, less than a year.
And you were a co-author or a chapter of a book? I thought I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, that's the research that was just published. I'm a co-author on that. I also have written my own book, and I have written my own chapter in a previous edition of that book. But this is the newest thing that this group of people we just did.
Do you want to give a plug for the book that you wrote?
Yes, and I don't have it with me, so you're going to take a little tour of my apartment. I got to go get it.
We get to see the squat bench.
Yes. Here is my book. Sorry, it's dark over here. I'll go back where I was. This is my book. It's called
Finding Your Path as a Woman in School Leadership.
Yes. So you're like, Kim, why are you writing a book about women in school leadership? Because I worked with so many coaches, and we could talk about this for a whole nother hour too. Many of them happen to be women because the path to leadership for women is often a little bit more circuitous than it is for men, or bumpy, or right. So I was working with a lot of women in all of my work that I do, and I would always acknowledge the work that they are doing as being leadership work. And I would say, wow, you're really leading in this way, or that's a really great leadership skill, or have you ever thought about this as leadership? And every time I said it, the women would always be like, oh, no, not me. I'm not a leader. No, no, no. And it just happened too many times for me to be okay with it. And so this was kind of happening in the fall of 2019. 18. And so I host my own podcast. So I thought I'll just interview a couple of women leaders on the podcast and we'll like peek behind the curtain. And these women that are saying, no, I'm not a leader, can hear from other successful leaders that in fact, what you're doing is very much leadership work. And as you know, the spring of 2020 was COVID. Everyone were going through some stressful times. A lot of people were in their house and they didn't have a lot of, social time, and they also were dealing with a lot of stress. So they got to have this really nice, reflective conversation with me on Zoom where I talked to them about their amazing leadership career. We talked for an hour, and by the summer of 2020, or 2019, I think I'm getting the years wrong, 2019, by the summer of 2019, I had interviewed 70 successful women. And I was like, I need to stop doing these interviews because I could do this for the rest of my life, but what am I getting out of it? And the following year, I happened to have another conversation for the podcast. And the woman I was talking to, Rania Saeb, who is amazing, I said, Rania, you just did all this work. You just wrote this book. Like I had all these interviews. Like, what should I do with them? And she's like, you have to get it out there. And I was like, all right. And so myself and my co-author, Christina Botbill, who's also one of the women that I interviewed, we're like, let's make it a book. And so we did. And so I now have this book that I wrote,
and it's on my summer reading list. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to put it out there in the Ethernet to say, if you're a woman in leadership and you're sort of on the fence, and you may be one of those women that says, no, not me, I don't think so. Please read this book and take a look and see how parallel a lot of these stories are.
They are. And that was amazing. I mean, it was such a gift that all those women were willing to speak to me and the things that I heard. And now I'm an auditory learner because, I grew up in that certain age when the only way you got to learn anything was if the person talked to you. So for me, all those stories are kind of like in my brain now. And I just, all the time, I'm always thinking, I remember when Kathleen Nagley said that, and when Sheena Nabholz said that, and Nadine Richards said that, they're just at my fingertips. So I feel really lucky. And many of them are in this book.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Fantastic.
What a wonderful book.
Thank you.
So listeners, I'm just going to let you know, we're going to put everything in the show notes. See, Kent is doing a fantastic job, but we will also reach out to Kim to get all that information and put it in the show notes. So you don't have to stress about writing this all down. But it's at this point in the show that we often ask you a couple of questions because our listeners are all very eager to hear. Do you have any police stories?
Now, before I'm going to give Miss Kim just a second of thinking time, because I do want to say that I believe that the best police stories from Kim are going to be reserved for the Patreon. So we might get a custom story. I don't know if we're going to get the best one, but stay tuned. It's out there. It'll come out in the future. Sorry, Miss Kim. You are rubbing with authorities.
Feel the pressure. Now I really feel the pressure. I am trying to really rack my brain of either a police or a custom story. And I do not have anything good. Did I ever get something confiscated from customs, Alex? I'm looking at my husband to see if he remembers anything.
And now to tell us the real story behind this, I'm bringing Alex to step up to the mic.
Camera pivot.
Sorry, I don't have a good story.
Lucky ones. You are really one of the lucky ones because no one in our business chooses to have a run-in with authority. It usually finds us. But, maybe because of your organizational skills or lucky stars, you just haven't had that run-in with authority. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think it helps that I don't drive. I think a lot of those things happen in cars, and we have never driven, so...
So can I tell a little story? Because I don't often get to tell police stories.
Please,
so
go ahead.
I will tell, and it's a driving story, but I was a passenger.
For the new year, is this a new 2025 story there, JP?
No. This was a story way back, but it did teach me how to drive in Turkey. So I was in the car. I was a brand new teacher in Turkey, Istanbul, and I was in the car with my friend Jaime, who now teaches at the American School of Warsaw. But he was the math teacher in the middle school. And he was driving, he's from Colombia, and he was driving just great, as always. We have to be a little assertive in Istanbul to get anywhere. And we went through the toll, and he has an automatic transponder. So, no, fine, that's great. And I happened to notice out of the corner of my eye this policeman that was flagging people over. And he pointed to Jaime and he flagged him over. And I said, Jaime, the policeman wants to talk to you. And he just waved and he kept driving. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, oh, no, you don't stop for police here. And I said, you don't? He said, no, because they just want to bribe. So you just wave. You're just like, oh, hi, how are you? You keep driving. And the guy was just standing there. He didn't have a police car or a motorcycle. And so, yeah, there was no way for him to chase him down. So he was just like, I guess, okay, well, I'll just keep trying somebody else. And I learned from that. And so I did not stop for police either. When I got my driver's, when I got my car and everything. And I always remember having passengers and doing the same thing, sort of passing on the same story. So sometimes in certain countries, you might just not stop. You might just keep driving.
I have a lot of crazy stories. They just don't involve the police.
Or they don't involve her being caught.
Well, if you feel free to share.
If you want a stressful story, I can share a short stressful story with you.
Sure,
Absolutely.
yeah.
The last time we lived here, we lived in the Ratchaprasong area, which is like the main shopping mall part of Bangkok. And we lived here during the Red Shirt protests. And that was the year that we were moving from Bangkok to Japan. And the protests happened on our street. So all of our stuff is in our apartment. And we live in our apartment. And the street is entirely blocked off. And no cars can come and go. So for the last 2 months of our time here, the first time that we lived here, we had to move to a service department so we could get in and out and be able to get to work. And we were waiting anxiously for the protest to be done so the moving truck could get in and get
your stuff.
And the protest did not end.
Were they polite to you? Would they see you coming?
We weren't allowed. People weren't allowed.
Were the protesters polite to you? I mean, like, oh, you weren't going in and out of the house at that point.
No. So we took our stuff to the other side of the city. We took like a couple suitcases to the other side of the city, paid another round of rent to a service department for, I forget, maybe two months or something like that. So grateful, still so grateful to Kun Usa, who is the Thai headmaster of International School Bangkok, who was able to arrange the movers to come in and get our stuff before we left the country, because I just can't even imagine having to leave. Would we still be paying rent? Like what would happen? Like the protests were not over by the time we left, but she was able to work her magic and get the moving truck in there and get all of our stuff out. And it made it safely to Japan, several months later. So that was stressful, but it did not involve the police. Well, it could have involved the police.
Yeah,
it
who
could
knows?
have
Me and the police.
That perfectly segues into our next question for you. If you could only grab 3 items out of that house to take with you, not including living things, what would those 3 items be?
Do you want fun things, or do you want, like, it would be my passport would be number 1.
Well, yeah, you're going to need that. So, but 3 items that you need in life to make you feel, comfortable, happy, that type of thing.
My laptop, probably my journals, and my phone, and something memorable, wedding photos or something like that.
Excellent. JP, let's go around the horn and get final thoughts. I'll start with my co-host JP, and then Kim, I'll come to you for final thoughts for the ITP audience, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Any objections to that plan?
No, I just want to say this is one of the fastest hours I've ever spent on the podcast, Kim. So I thank you so much for coming on and for we're working our schedule and able to come and share so much with our listeners. I kind of feel like we just hit the iceberg and there's so much under the surface. So please do consider coming back when you have something new to share for, either your association, your business, a new book maybe in the works. Please do come back and share with our audience, because I know that we're going to get a lot of fan mail after this one.
Hey, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much. It was so fun to talk to you and talk all things international schools. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. We've had a lovely time. And you realize, JP, man, your expression was, we really just smacked into the iceberg there, huh? We just...
No, hit the type of the
I had this vision of the Titanic where we just hit part of the iceberg. We didn't go head on. All right. So listen, I agree with JP, man. This has been such a great hour. I'd like to thank our very special guest, Kim Cofino. And she's got so many things I want to say about her, but you can connect with her and find out all about her business and her classes at edurolearning.com is the kind of place of entry. Also, please check out her book, Finding Your Path as a Woman in School Leadership. And you could probably find that at www.amazon.com or wherever you find your finer books. So thank you so much, Kim. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I would also like to thank my co-host tonight, JP Mint. You can find her at JP Mint Consulting. Thank you so much, JP Mint. And out there in the Ethernet is Greg, our other co-host. You can find his book, International Teaching, The Best Kept Secret in Education, or the other way around, I can't remember, also at Amazon.com. Thank you, Greg. I am Ken the Cat Guy, and as always, you can find me in room 303. Thanks, and see you next week.